So I'm a chef and a restaurant consultant. I used to own a restaurant. It was in Bangalore. I ran it for 7 years. These days, I focus on food photography, as you probably heard, and consulting for restaurants, setting up menus for them, doing training stuff. The theme of this TEDx talk is Ideations Unlimited, and I thought if I try to teach you food and cooking. First of all, it's going to be difficult because while I started cooking at the age of 13, it was only by the age of 15 that I was actually any good at it. So it's a 2-year process. You probably won't learn much in 18 minutes. And I also wanted you management students to have some tools that for decision making and influence that will serve you well in non-food capacities as you go out into the world and get jobs and influence others. So I've chosen a slightly offbeat theme, food related, but also having a lot of psychology involved, and that's using psychology in restaurant menu design. This is a part of the work that I do. It's not just cooking food, it's also designing menus for restaurants, profitable menus for them. So I will tell you how I pick items and how I choose what pricing to use for them and things like that, which you will find in your life as well as future corporate people that will come in handy. And along the way, I'll also give you links that you can Google and to read up on more so that you have a point of inspiration, right? So my name is Madhu Menon. You can find me ranting on Twitter at MadmanWeb. If you're a sadist or a masochist, you can probably go and do that. Follow me. You can email me, and you can just Google me to find my other columns on cooking that I've written. So there's a fair bit. I usually do this on every presentation I do. I did this a week ago, but then I found out 2 days ago that some scientist called Madhu Menon has invented a little material that's 1 atom thick, and he's the first result on Google these days on Madhu Menon. So that's not me. He has more hair. So, right? Right. Can we have the next slide, please? Wee, gizmo. Right. Important question is, why is menu design such a difficult topic? Most people think, okay, you hire a chef, you put together a list of dishes, you put it in the menu, you decide you get the price point of the thing, you see, okay, how much does it cost to make, and you decide a price, and that's all there is to it, right? But it's not enough. There's a lot of thought that goes into menu. I mean, for instance, I can come up with 100 ideas, but is that a good thing to put on a menu? Probably not. Right? Quality service and food is obviously important in a restaurant. It's taken for granted. But people have to feel a sense of value. They have to feel satisfied. And these are things that we can actually manipulate. You may not agree with me yet, but by the time I'm done, you will. Right? And thoughtless menu design actually makes the restaurants less money. So it takes money off the table. And if you do that, there's a difference between what the consumer is willing to pay for it and what you're charging, for instance, you are leaving that money on the table. So the goals of restaurant menu design are to obviously increase profitability for the restaurant, increase customer satisfaction, which means that a customer goes thinking that he got what he thought he was getting in terms of value for his money and satisfaction. And the last item is, of course, value, which I told you can manipulate. For instance, how much does a coffee actually cost to make? $5, and yet many of you are happy to go to a cafe coffee day and pay 120 rupees for a cappuccino just so that you can have the experience of sitting there and chatting with people, right? So that's not just a product related thing, that's a perception of value. You might think, hey, that's not too bad, you get to do that and sit in a coffee shop, and that's value for you. So these are things that we can manipulate, and I'll show you how we manipulate them. So I know the word manipulate actually sounds dirty, but persuasion and manipulation are two sides of the same coin. What I'm going to tell you about are actually weapons of influence and how people influence the way you make decisions, right? Let me tell you a little bit about how restaurants lose money by not doing design properly. I'm sure you've gone to a lot of these low-end restaurants where they have 200 dishes on the menu in a multi-cuisine menu, and you're going through it, and you don't know what to order because everything's just mashed up. And you go to a cheap Chinese restaurant and you can't tell the difference between ching chong chicken and ling ki chicken or whatever. I mean, they probably make up these words. I'm sure of it because you don't know what it's supposed to mean, right? And you just go, what does it mean? What is this? And he says, sir, dry spicy. Huh? And that's all you know. What is that? That is like medium spicy gravy. So that's all you have. Now, clearly this is a restaurant that has not put in too much thought into its menu design. And to their, to be fair to them, they probably don't have the expertise in doing that. So one of the restaurant mistakes that people make is to treat pricing as a cost plus model, which a cost plus model means that you judge the cost of manufacturing a product and then you add a percentage to it and you say, okay, so it costs me 100 rupees to make and my overheads are another 100% or whatever. So you charge 3 times the cost price. Now that's actually a good starting point in the restaurant business, but it's not the most reliable way of doing it. And if you consistently apply that, you will find that you're losing money on some, making money on a lot of other things, but making huge losses on something else, right? The other mistake is to think that all menu items get the same amount of attention. So you're going through the first page of a menu and you think, okay, item number 1 and item number 25 get the same attention as item number 12. This is completely not true. Think of how you read a newspaper, and you don't go one line by line by line. I'm sure Indrani knows all about this. We have a Z scanning pattern that's there in newspapers, which is why the newspaper headlines are placed in a particular way. I'll get to that in a bit. And so they just think, okay, we just need to put 20 dishes on the menu and that's it, right? And the third mistake they make is thinking that loads of options is a good thing, because who doesn't like options, right? Customization, or add this sauce, make shakes in 30 different varieties. It's all supposed to be good. It's more features, but these can be confusing. And I'll show you why. There are terms for this, why it's not a good idea. And of course, thinking that customers can tell the true value of the dishes. That if you make, say, chapatis for 5 rupees, that they know exactly that chapatis actually cost 5 rupees. So customers don't know, and you can take advantage of this, right? So let me go through a few ways that we as chefs and restaurant consultants, we manipulate all this. Which brings me to my next point called the anchoring effect. This is an interesting thing in psychology. Let me describe it to you, right? You walk into a clothing store and the first thing that you see is this really good-looking jacket. And you say, oh, I must have that. And then you go, okay, how much is that? You check the tag, 5,000 bucks. Who thinks 5,000 bucks is expensive? Anyone who doesn't think it's expensive, please raise your hands. Okay, good, I can use that as an example. Just wanted to make sure. These days people spend 10,000 bucks on jeans. I don't know. I don't, but people do. So you see, you really want that jacket, right? But 5,000 bucks, way more expensive. Suppose 2 things happen. One scenario, I'll give you one scenario. Suppose someone came to you, one of the store assistants came to you and said, "How are you interested in the jacket, sir?" And you say, "Yeah, but it's a bit expensive." And then he tells you, but that jacket is 50% off, sir. It's 2,500 bucks. Just saying, think about what happens. Your head has suddenly done a flip, right? You were thinking 5,000 bucks is expensive. But now you're thinking, damn, it's 50% off. It's a full 2,500 rupees off. Alternatively, scenario number 2, you don't like that jacket, and this scenario is far more common. You go inside and you find a whole row of jackets for, say, 2,500 to 2,500 rupees. All of them are not as great as this. You know, it's obviously a fine leather jacket, but those are pretty good too. And you think, okay, ye nahi, wo le lenge. So what has happened is your anchor has been set. Your baseline expectation of pricing has been set. By displaying a ridiculously expensive item, the shop has actually got you to do what it wanted to do all the time, which is to sell that range of 2,000 to 2,500 jackets, because your mind has changed from thinking that 5,000 rupees is expensive or that you can't afford the 2,000, 2,500 rupee jackets. It has led you into thinking that these represent extremely good value. So you've just been manipulated or persuaded, if you will, right? And if you're offered a discount instead, you're thinking this is phenomenally good value. Discount. You must have gone through 1,000 sales on Flipkart and Amazon. You know, you've seen something that you didn't really want, but 40% off was too good, yeah. Yeah, it was really good value. I have, and I know this stuff, okay? I've seen hard disk, external hard disk, 7,000 rupees, but 30% cashback on Paytm. Might as well buy it. It's happened to me. So we all fall prey to this. Don't feel ashamed of doing it. Just think that it's one of the techniques that we use. And the same thing. So basically, what the store has done is by putting an anchor of expensive, it has made the other things look more reasonable. And this is what we do in restaurant menus a lot of the time. What we do is we lead with a really expensive, say, seafood platter, 1,200 rupees. Now that's expensive, but it makes the 700 rupee prawns next to it look cheap. If you had seen the 700 rupee prawns first, you would have said that's expensive. But you think, I can't afford the 1,200, but 700 rupees is 500 rupees cheaper than 1,200. It's much better value. See how I manipulated your perception of value? Now, next time you go to a restaurant and you see this happening, you will know it's happening and you will still fall for it, I'm telling you. You will still fall for it. But you'll be a little better informed, right? Anchors like that, they're not even high-end watches. You walk into some of the stores, you find a 1 lakh rupee watch, you know you're not going to buy it. But 15,000 rupee watches next to it look much more reasonable. And then you're actually looking around. So the anchors are designed to not have very high sales, but their purpose is just to make other things look reasonable. Because everything else is compared to that first thing that you see. So I'm just going to go through a few of the visual design elements. And again, psychology done. I've got a designer here, so be careful. Fonts, a lot of restaurants make this bad habit of throwing every font they could find in the Windows font folder at menus, making things extremely confusing. The thing is, consistency in fonts helps define hierarchies. Okay, like for instance, this one, that's Calibri. You see they're large sized, they're headings, they're clear. So you expect that in every section, when you see that, there's a different section starting. If you have different fonts all the time, you don't know where to start. Your mind is confused. That adds to the decision fatigue that I talked about earlier, because now you're processing a lot more visual information and you have to sort out this mess. So the good design is good business sense, right? Spacing. I've seen menus that are, there's no space between individual items. And that's a bad thing because your mind can't tell one dish from the other. It has to constantly scan much closer. And that means that reading time increases. So if you want to have items, please put some space between them, right? You can tell them apart. Negative space helps. Negative space, this is, say, who knows what negative space is? Wonderful. One person knows. Right. So if you have a certain hierarchy established and you have your margins and all that, your eye knows where to follow. But negative space can help pull out things. So you can pull out certain things for highlighting. You can put it in there. And that's where the eye will go to. A good place for food photos and stuff like that. Right? Photos, again, used judiciously, they're great. They whet the appetite. But used, without, okay, I'm jumbling up, but truckload of photos, not good, because they make you look cheap, right? And descriptions. Descriptions obviously create an image in your head of words like crispy, tender, juicy. All these things are that fast food chains have become experts at. They all evoke a certain memory in your head, right? And that's what they want to tap into. Research shows that when you're visualizing something, 90% of a dish is really, before it comes to you, the anticipation of it. And that's created by photos, it's created by smells. When you walk into a restaurant and there's, when you walk into a cookie shop and there are smells of apple and cinnamon floating into your nose, that builds anticipation. When you read descriptions of certain dishes and, crispy skin and spicy and piquant and all those things that restaurants use, sometimes a little too much, but that's all supposed to create interest, right? So those things are important. And lastly, little magnets, this is what I call design magnets, which are these little pull quotes or little borders around certain dishes that help highlight those things. You might have seen those chef specials, little icons for chef specials. Overuse of them, of course, is a bad thing. But if you would have just 2 items as chef specials, guess what your customer's eye is going to go to? Just those little things on the side. If you put a little heading around them and say, okay, our I don't know, let's say our sandwiches are the greatest, made with love and fresh ingredients and everything that's healthy. people will read that, but you can't overuse it. So you have to limit these to certain items and make sure that these are the most profitable items, right? Because that's the whole point of the thing. If you use certain colors, for instance, I've not mentioned colors here, but colors can help highlight things as well. But if everything is in a different color, obviously it won't work. So limited use of design elements often helps bring menus the readability and the sales that it requires, right? So that brings me to the end of my talk. I was going to talk about salads, but no, I'm just kidding. There's no way I can teach you cooking in 18 minutes. If you want, you can Google me and read my Mint columns, which covers basics of cooking in a very scientific manner. And Madhu Menon columns will usually do it on Google, right? And I hope you learned something from this. I think you can take all these examples, take them out of the restaurant menu context and still apply them to products that you might be working with in the future and how things are perceived. And thank you all for your time. Cheers.